So I'd like to start off today by looking at e-learning in a little bit more detail. So since we started this, we've seen a 36% rise in focus on e-learning, with a 14% increase on focus from last year. So what's causing this trend, this move in the marketplace in terms of delivery methods? So for me, it's a continued increase in millennials and Gen Z entering the marketplace. And as Andrew mentioned, we do have Andy Johnson here from the London School of Online to talk about their effects. But according to a report by KPMG, they now represent, or will by 2020 represent, 50% of the global workforce. So Gen Z, millennials, we're tech savvy, we're competitive, we want on-demand content, and we've got a thirst for knowledge. So that accounts for some of that sort of shift. But that's not the end of it, because obviously 50% of the marketplace isn't millennials or Gen Z. So what accounts for that? So according to Tubular Insight, up to 80% of the content we now consume is visual or video based. We do have Zoom here to talk about the effect of video in delivery methods, but that for me accounts for a large amount of that shift in the marketplace. And I'd like to just drill into that in a little bit more detail, and I'd like to look at gamification. So I'm sure everyone's heard of gamification. For those of you who haven't or don't know what it means, essentially, gamification is the inclusion of game elements and game mechanics in a non-game context, in this case learning. So that's things like points, leaderboards, levels, countdowns in our learning. So why is gamification effective? So according to CIPD, it works by promoting an emotional response to learning based on uncertain rewards. And if we can tap into that neuroscientific technique, that can have huge results for our training. And I just pulled out a couple of points on that. So it can increase the impact and retention of our learning. It can enable us to affect behavioural change of our staff or indeed our learners. And it also can help us speed up the time to compliance in terms of increased uptake. And that sort of insight for me has come from 3 case studies. So AstraZeneca, they rolled out gamification in their medicine learning with a 99% completion rate in their network. Google, they designed a travel expense system which resulted in close to 100% of employees maintaining compliance with that. So maybe Dave, we should be looking at that in our expenses. And Engine Yards, they increased their response rate for customer service by 40% by posting response time leaders to all their employees. We can see that the effect of gamification in their techniques. But that doesn't mean the end of traditional classroom-based learning. It certainly definitely still has its parts, as I'm sure there's plenty of face-to-face training specialists in the room today. So what are the benefits of using face-to-face training? According to EdgePoint Learning, it's a far more efficient way of using your time when training on highly complex subjects. Not only that, according to Fine Courses, their 2018 annual review, ILT training was popular amongst executive level learners. And there's 2 huge things that our trainers can do for us in face-to-face sessions. They can adapt the training to the needs of their learners, and they can establish a dialogue with our learners and our customers. So what does this all mean for our training organisations? It means that in order to be successful in the marketplace, we need to ensure that we diversify our delivery methods. We need to ensure that we're not just focusing on one type of learning, and it's very much a blended learning approach. So next, I'd like to talk about technology. Start off with looking at the rise in online bookings. So 59% is the main source of bookings, with 160% rise since 2018. So why are we seeing the shift towards online booking? For me, it's about shifting consumer trends. So according to Euromonitor International, 51% of UK consumers prefer online shopping, and by 2021, it will be the leader in retail. E-commerce is expected to become the largest retail channel. So we can see there that there's a wider shift in consumer trends. So what do we need to do? We need to continually improve our online presence and our online enrolment process, and that doesn't just limit us to our public courses. We need to make sure that we're utilising self-service portals and other automation products such as DocuSign to ensure that online presence, that online facility is there for not only our open enrollment courses. I'd like to talk briefly about evaluations. Now, I'm not going to steal too much of Chris's thunder. Of course, Jack's here today to talk to you about that in more detail. But as you can see, since 2016, we've seen a huge uptake in online surveys, and this year we've seen that it's actually levelled out with paper happy sheets. So I want to talk very briefly about this. So obviously when it comes to evaluations, we've already talked about measuring success of training companies as customer success. So how do you do that? So how do we measure that? So we've got things like Net Promoter Score, we've got Likert scales, we've got the social proof, we've got testimonials. So what's the downside of using paper-based evaluation forms based on this information? So paper-based evaluations, it's very difficult to analyse the data that we capture in paper-based evaluations. It's not secure, and it leads to inaccurate results. And what I mean by that is 100% feedback is not what we're interested in. We're interested in that the 100% of the feedback we receive is meaningful and valuable. And it's really important that we utilise that information, that social proof. And just to illustrate that, the effectiveness of social proof, according to Harvard Business Review, a 1-star increase on Yelp led to a 5 to 9% increase in revenue. So we can see there the power of surveys and indeed measuring our successfulness in training. I'd also like to talk to you about the systems that we're using. So luckily, as most of the people in this room are accessplanit customers, you're already utilising a management system, but 42% of people we spoke to advised us that their current systems are not effective, and 37% are still utilising spreadsheets. So we have seen a rise. It's doubled. The use of software has doubled since 2016 as providers embrace technology. But that is not the end of it. It's important that we continue the review, the products that we use, especially as we see more and more different types of technology entering the marketplace, virtual and augmented reality, gamification. So it's really important that the rest of our technology stack keeps up to date with that. And that's not just at a company-wide level, reviewing CRMs, ERPs, finance systems. It's also about each and every one of us and the technology that we use in our life day in, day out. So we interact with technology all the time. I'm sure we've got people here with Fitbit, Duolingo, and it's about understanding what software we use and why we use it, and identifying what we're good at and utilising software to ensure we maintain that level, and identifying what we're not so good at and implementing software to help us increase that. So there's plenty of tools out there. So for example, if team collaboration is something that you're looking to improve, maybe start using Slack or Messenger. If you're worried about time management or visualization of information, maybe it's time to start using systems like Trello. So there's plenty of systems out there that we can use individually ourselves to increase our productivity. And it's all about understanding why we're using those tools. I'd like to move on to talking about sales and marketing. So 76% of all respondents are utilising email marketing. Now this was this one really resonated with me quite a lot, because obviously last year we had a huge change in email marketing. GDPR came into force 25th of May last year, and it almost, for a lot of the year running up to that, people were talking about being the end of email marketing, or having a detrimental impact on the way in which we market our products. But in actual fact, I actually think that GDPR, 76% of people still using it, it's actually made it easier for us to communicate with our customers, because now we're only communicating with people who are interested in talking with us, interested in communicating with us. And that does bear out in statistics. So peachy.co.uk, they've seen a response rate increase post-GDPR from 0.007% up to 4%. So we can see that actually, you can argue that GDPR is actually having a positive effect on the way in which we market. So what other forms of marketing do we use? So 100% of people said that they are using some form of social media, with 56% of people utilising LinkedIn. So why are we continuing to use this? Again, it speaks volumes. Over 90% of millennials are on social media. Over 75% of Generation X are using social media, and nearly 50% of baby boomers are also active on social media. So it's really important that we understand our customers, we target them with relevant content, and we understand exactly where they are to ensure that we're using the correct channels to communicate with them. And we can now move on to looking at how other ways that we market. So it's really important that we diversify the way in which we market. So there's two bits that really stand out here for me. So first of all, referrals and reputation continue to be a really powerful mode of marketing, and that's never going to change. But how do we get those referrals, that reputation in front of people, if we're not landing on that first page of Google, if we're not on Facebook, if we're not on Instagram, if we're not on LinkedIn? And just to illustrate how important that is, 54% of clicks is on that first one, 89% on page one. So if you're not landing on page one, your chances of increasing revenue are very slim. And it's good that we have Digital 22 here today to talk to us about how we market, to ensure that we're not missing out on any potential revenue. And I'd like to finish off today's talk by looking at our word cloud. So these are some of the comments that have come out of our survey this year. And there's a few here that we've talked about today. So a need to modernise, continually improving our products, our services, competition online. Poor online competition is a real opportunity for us to utilise our online presence to increase revenue. And I'm sure if we can get past this uncertainty around Brexit, we'll see an increase in our feeling amongst the trading industry, which has increased from 5.5 to 6.5 this year. So we are seeing more confidence in the marketplace, but much more to do in 2020.